Good afternoon. Welcome here, everybody. So we have a complex topic, a lot of things to discuss, and a lot of speakers in this panel discussion. So everything will be very quick, very short, and we are not going to introduce what quantum technologies are. For that, we have an excellent idea, which Corey Stambo from the White House had just over lunch, and we are improvising here. And thank you very much to the technical staff for making it possible. So there is one 2-minute video which is going to tell you what quantum technologies are, so that we don't have to explain that again, but it has one important advantage. So we are speaking here about communicating, about breaking walls. And this is a video about communicating quantum technologies, which comes from an idea which we developed, we proposed from the Quantum Community Network in the European Quantum Flagship, which the US government has taken up. So this is a US-produced video, which will converge to something which you will see at the end, you know, what it is for. So then at my click, the video should start. Click.
Think small. Even tinier. Oh, and also colder. Keep going. Yep, right there. That's quantum.
Pretty tiny. Might seem insignificant. But quantum, the science of the super small and the super cold, has transformed our lives. It gave us lasers for surgery, for trapping and cooling and investigating atoms, and cat toys.
Quantum technology gave us the atomic clock, which is the beating heart of GPS, allowing us to navigate all over the world, wherever we want to go, avoiding traffic jams, and finding our way home.
Also, it's the science behind MRI scans that let us see what we're made of.
That's just the beginning. Scientists and engineers use quantum every day to understand nature and build new technologies.
The idea of being a scientist was always kind of exciting to me.
When I was in high school, I had a fantastic teacher who showed me that chemistry is more than just mixing chemicals.
When I was a teenager, I wanted to be part of a scientific revolution. After years of searching for one, I stumbled upon quantum information science.
When I was growing up, I was always reading a book. I loved building universes in my head. Now I get to do that for a living as a quantum physicist.
Now as a physicist, I build quantum sensors.
Now, I write software that helps predict the quantum behavior of different molecules.
Now I develop software for quantum computers.
It's actually pretty exciting to imagine sending these sensors into space, and that they could help us learn something new about the universe.
Everyone has their own reasons for getting into quantum.
I want to be a creator, not just a consumer.
I want to explore the unknown.
I want to inspire my students.
Anyone can be a part of quantum, and it's never too late or too early to get started.
I'm a part of quantum.
I'm part of quantum too.
I too am quantum.
Let's quantum together.
Let's quantum together.
Feliz Día de la Cuántica.
Happy World Quantum Day.
Happy World Quantum Day.
Happy World Quantum Day.
So thanks a lot. Well, my name is Tommaso Calarco. I'm from Forschungszentrum Jülich, which is Germany's biggest national lab, and we do in real life, so you can come and touch it afterwards if you wish. This is a real-life replica of a quantum computer, like the one which you have seen in the video. And we are going to talk about not only quantum computing, but also quantum technologies, and we do this in a cooperation mood, because we have here representatives from different continents, and former representatives of our own continent. And so, without further ado, please, you have 20 seconds each to say who you are and where you come from.
My name is Sebastian Luber. I'm from Infineon Technologies, Europe's largest semiconductor supplier. We are very active in quantum technologies, actually in 3 pillars. So preparing communication to be safe even in the quantum world, developing quantum components for the emerging market, and also looking into the application of quantum computing. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael Boll is my name. I
most of you or some of you know me from my role at Bosch. I was the CDO and CTO at Bosch for quite some long time. I worked in the European flagship program on quantum technologies, and since beginning of this year, I'm chairing the ZEISS Foundation and work together with ZEISS.
Thank you.
I'm Ian Wormsley from Imperial College London. I was director of one of the UK hubs in quantum computing and the co-founder of a startup, Orca Computing, that builds quantum computers.
And my name is Corey Stamball. I'm a senior policy advisor at the National Quantum Coordination Office, which is located in the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House. I'm also a physicist from the National Institute of Standard Technology, and I actually teach part-time physics at a local community college. At the National Quantum Coordination Office, we help develop and support the national policies around quantum that we're going to hear about today.
So we have policymakers, academics, industry, from 3 different countries at least. And what we are going to do is something which is very politically incorrect. So it is a SWOT analysis. SWOT means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And typically, you do this within close borders, not to tell your adversaries or your competitors or even your friends maybe, but just to analyze what your organization can do. And instead, we are going to do this together today. So I announced that to them in advance, so they are well prepared. And every one of them will have 1 minute each to answer each of these 4 categories. And we start with strengths. So I would like to ask every one of you what you think that strengths of your own ecosystem in which you are located are. And a strength is something positive, which is a property internally of your own, which will help you achieve success. And we start from Ian.
Okay, thank you. So I'll speak a little bit about the UK National Quantum Technologies Programme, which started in 2014. It's an investment of about £1 billion over the course of a decade. I'd say a big strength of that system is that it brought together a good base of underlying quantum science into a technology-focused array of hubs, together with a skills development program, and together with industry engagement that allowed the emergence of a thriving startup ecosystem that's really enabled connectivity between supply chain, so component suppliers, startup companies building sort of some elements of the stack of various bits and pieces, and users at the same time. And it's those multiple levels, science, technology, innovation, and commercialization that I think has been a strength of the system.
Perfect. Also setting a good standard for the speed. Now, Sebastian, your turn.
Yes. So coming from industry, what I think is a very good strength that we are working together across boundaries of the companies. So, for example, we have a consortium, as you know, QTech, where even competitors are joining forces in order to work together in a pre-competitive phase to further elaborate the power of quantum computing. What I also appreciate a lot is the very strong context locally to the academic world. So there we have very strong academic research, especially in the various. We could also call it hubs, perhaps in Munich, in the Lower Saxony, all across Germany. And here to strengthen the ties between industry and university, I think we are approaching this, and this is definitely a strength.
Thank you very much. Now, what are the strengths of the US in quantum, Corey?
So the US quantum ecosystem really started in the late 90s, and we've been investing, sustained and slowly increasing that investment really up until recently. And what that did is in the mid-2000s, we had already seeded some industry engagement. And that really led to the launch of what we called the National Quantum Initiative as part of a congressional act that really infused new federal money into the system. So we had in place the long-term knowledge. We had the genesis of a industry base. Now you can see one of our big strengths is we have many of the main companies that develop quantum computers are located in the US. And because of the National Quantum Initiative Act and the activity around it, we've now launched a dozen quantum centers being run by the Department of Energy, the National Science Foundation, and coming out of the Department of Defense. And so you put that whole thing together, you have an ecosystem of industry, a federal investment in academia and labs, and you have the generation of a workforce that can support that.
Fantastic. And last but not least.
I think also we look into the environment in Germany. Academia is very strong, large research organizations. I think we also have a strong history of working in photonics. So not only looking into the direction of superconducting structures, but also in photonic structures. And I think this opens up a very promising spectrum for future quantum technologies. A second strength I see in Germany, Europe, is definitely engineering capabilities. I think if we, and we will talk about this later, if we talk about market entry of quantum technology, it goes alongside with industrialization, with engineering efforts, and definitely building bridges between science on the one hand side and engineering, and last but not least also computer scientists on the other side. This will be a success factor, and I think in Germany, in Europe, we are very strong in that. And last but not least, and Mr. Luber also mentioned this, I think also the governmental funding in research, in basic research, and setting up joint projects between academia, startups, and also big corporations is a great success factor.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. That was an easy one, right? Because everybody can say how great we are. Now comes a first difficult one, which is weaknesses. So now, looking at your own ecosystem, it would be great to learn from you what you think that are the main weaknesses, or maybe the one main weakness in each of the ecosystems that you represent. And we start from Michael this time. Yes.
No time to think, yeah?
No.
Thank you. Yeah, I think looking into quantum technologies, and especially the biggest perspectives people see typically when talking about quantum technologies is quantum computer. And here I see as a strength in our ecosystem, I mentioned this, the foundational work, the academic world. Then the next strength we have is working on the component side. So for example, what Mr. Luber is doing is working on the component side of quantum technologies. What is definitely a weakness in Germany, and I would also say in Europe, is we are missing system integrators. Commercial system integrators who build a complete product which is called a quantum computer and bring it to market.
Wow, that's a big one. Corey, what do you say?
Well, I think I'll take the interview response and say I think a lot of these weaknesses are really going to be opportunities, and we'll be able to say that next. But I think there's probably three different areas that it's a weakness. I think it's a weakness in every system, and again, that's why you'll see it as an opportunity later. One is that it's a global supply chain, so you cannot go it alone. So we need to rely on commercial vendors from all over the world in order to realize our long-term goals. The second one is really one around how the federal government is funding, and a lot of it is annual funding. And so be able to make long-term, I know in the EU can do like these 5-year projects, but oftentimes we're looking for just appropriations for the next year, and that can sometimes slow some of the progress there. And then a third one is that we rely heavily on bringing in international talent, but I'm also going to obviously that's going to be an opportunity, a huge opportunity, but it is one where we in the US, we rely heavily on bringing in international talent to support the workforce.
Thank you. That was also a very, very honest and open question. Now for Ian.
I'd say the biggest weakness is cat toys. By that I mean, I assume that reference, Corey, was to the idea that we are building quantum machines at macroscopic scale, so we are building effectively Schrödinger's cat. We know that there's no physics barrier to doing that, but the engineering barriers are absolutely fierce, and I would say it's not yet determined that we will be able to overcome all of those. But in that sense, it's the ultimate deep tech opportunity, because it's going to really push the frontiers that I think will be absolutely amazing, whatever comes out of it.
Now, that was quite a generic weakness, not a specific one to the UK, but we will forgive you for that, and we listen to what Sebastian has to say.
Yeah, I think deep tech has been especially the right word. So this means usually that you have to invest a lot of money, you need a lot of effort, a joint effort in the end, in order to make progress in the field. And that's also a challenge an opportunity which I see here, especially in Germany or in Europe, that we have a lot of efforts, great scientists, great people in the economy working on that, but it's a bit fragmented. So if we really manage to join here the forces also from the funding side to bring people together to get this living ecosystem, which means that you have a collaboration of universities of science as well as companies, really to get things going, to make this transition. And there I fully agree, it's the biggest challenge which we have, right, in Germany and in Europe, to industrialize, to commercialize the great scientific ideas which we have. So there especially we have to make even a better effort.
Okay, thank you. So that's great. And now, of course, this was a nice segue, which is not a two-wheel, moving system, but it is a Latin word for introducing the next part, which was about opportunities. However, I would like to point out, in a slightly provocative way, that yes, in the weaknesses that maybe we reciprocally have, as you correctly pointed out, there are opportunities. On the other hand, this is also, as we know, a delicate point, because one possible way of approaching these opportunities would be to say, okay, we have no system integrators in Europe, you have system integrators, let's be the supply chain and also the vendors chain. But this is something which, would be problematic, for instance, from a point of view of technological sovereignty. So how do we really build these bridges in a way which is satisfactory for us? And this is not a purely academic question, because, we are discussing this every day, actually, even last week when I was in DC. So let's keep this on the background for the moment and focus in an optimistic way on opportunities, but still think that, this is not so, rosy and just positive as on the purely scientific side. So breaking walls of innovation on the industrial side might be less trivial. And of course, we want to do that. This is why we are here, and your presentation testifies to that. But okay, let's delve a little bit into that. And first, with the question on opportunities. Who wants to take it?
Shall I start with something?
Yes, UK.
I'm trying to determine whether the Atlantic is a narrower body than the Channel, or the North Sea.
That's a tough one.
Well, to your point, I'd make 2 points. First of all, yes, of course, there has to be collaboration, simply because the problems are so difficult that the ideas are not likely to come with high probability from any one country, and therefore we have to be collaborating. How far up the chain we can do that before this becomes an issue of intellectual problem or national sovereign capability, I think remains an open question. But on that side, I would say, it's important that this technology proliferates, because if there is a massive imbalance anywhere in the world, I think that's more likely to lead to instability. So I think we have a responsibility to try and make this technology as broadly accessible as possible.
You are also alluding to some possible threats, and we come back to that later. So maybe now, Sebastian, what do you think to opportunities?
Here, as teleportation is part of quantum, this might help bridging the gap across the channel. We will see. For me, also, this is a new emerging market. So in computer science, we already are lacking the system integrators in Europe, in Germany. And now that quantum computing or quantum technology is emerging, there's also a great opportunity for European companies. And I give credit to that you're definitely leading in the field, but to also enter this market and become a very important or even a leading player. So for me, this is a great opportunity, but I fully agree this is only possible in a collaboration across boundaries, across countries. We need, again, the scientists. There still have to be scientific breakthroughs as well as the commercially experienced people to make this a success.
Corey.
Well, I think the number one opportunity, it goes back to the flow of talent. It is why we're successful. We put out a report about 1.5 years ago called The Role of International Talent in Quantum Information Science. And we really wanted to make the point and remind people just how critical it was that not only was talent continuing to flow, but the ideas were continuing to flow because of how important it's been to our success. And I did an analysis, and I looked at so I come from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and I think 3 or 4 of the Nobel Prizes in quantum, you can trace back to people there. But if you look closely at those Nobel Prizes, you can see the people that got them were either collaborators postdocs that came to the US, or graduate students who were being from a different country that were being worked with. In all three cases, it only happened because of the international collaboration. And so the real opportunity is to reinfuse that, to remind ourselves of how critical that is. And I'll take this as an opportunity to segue back to the video we showed in the World Quantum Day. Because what we saw in there is this idea of getting more people to get excited, get more young people into really STEM and quantum as a lever to bring them into that. And so the World Quantum Day that we celebrated on April 14th, 2022, April 14th, because in the right set of units, that is Planck's constant for 14. And the day, which, as you said, was started from people.
Actually, I'm the one who insisted very strongly for April 14 in there.
Yes.
And I'm happy that I managed to get that as opposed to some old, predominantly male and white scientist birth date.
And so we're very excited about that. But the thing was that this came out of, you said, an international push. It was a grassroots effort that we grabbed up hold on, and it got opportunity for countries all over the world to get involved. You can go to worldquantum.org, and you can actually see this map of all the countries around the world that got involved, and they're pushing to the hope of having what's going to be called the International Year of Quantum, where we can all celebrate all the wonderful things quantum has given us since Einstein's ideas back in 19 whatever year we want to go back to, and so these are a real opportunity, I think, to reinforce this international collaboration, this international coming down to this. That's the opportunity, I think.
So thank you very much. Corey got a bonus because he was actually advertising this idea of the World Quantum Day and the International Year of Quantum, and it is actually very exciting that the US government and the American Physical Society are very strongly engaged in that. And I will tell you now an anecdote which would be difficult to invent for me, okay? Because, I mean, it is really, it is something you wouldn't expect. So there are a couple of ministries in this country which would be responsible for supporting this idea of the year of something at UNESCO level. So there was a meeting with the German Physical Society a couple of weeks ago, I guess, in which the response, and you can guess which ministry, I don't remember even exactly, the response was, oh, no, but we already had the year of the camel, so we are done with that. We are not going to support the year of quantum. And I am quoting a statement which was made in a meeting with our federal government and the German Physical Society. As you can guess, it will not be possible for me to invent such a thing. So now, Michael, please.
Yes, thank you. So I think quantum technologies is one of the very few areas, at least, which I know, which is not lacking optimism. And the reason is quantum technologies offer us completely new ways to computing. That's the promise of the quantum computer. To sensing. That's the promise of quantum sensing. And last but not least, also quantum communication. So we do things using quantum mechanics in a completely different way. And this offers new possibilities. For example, in compute, in sensing, and so on. But in order not to become too enthusiastic, I always cite Amara's law, which basically says we tend to overestimate the impact of new technologies short-sighted, so in the near future, and we underestimate in the long term. And my point is we should more focus on the promise and also on the implementation scale on the long term and not expect too much in the short term. And if I talk about short term, I talk about the next 5 to 10 years. And if I talk about long term, I talk about several decades. And I'm very optimistic about the long term. I'm a little bit more cautious about the industrialization effects and possibilities in the short term.
It is really fantastic to hear such a statement from industry, because this is not what we always hear from industry. You know, there is a danger of hype. Actually, I am the director of the Institute of Quantum Control, and actually a lot of what I have to do is quantum hype control, because this is really expectation management, a big challenge that we have. So I'm very happy to hear that. And now for the last, well, it will not be the last question, of course, but it is the most difficult one, because the one about threats is when you analyze for yourself, what is it that from the outside world may come to you and hinder your success? So this is very non-trivial, and I see Corey raising his hand.
I'll be the one that dive into the deep water. So I think there's two threats, and I wanted to grab it because I think you are actually pointing to the first threat, which is a threat of what we would call a quantum winter, which is where the funding dries up.
Exactly.
And it leads to several effects. One, good science stops being done. Two, the talent that we've been incubating and creating now has to go out and find jobs, and they may find it in the industries, and they may find it somewhere else. And this could delay those opportunities you're talking about in the following period of time and push that back even further. So to me, that's a big threat that we have to deal with. And the second one is, and it's worth just reminding ourselves that while quantum computers present a lot of opportunities, they do present a direct threat in terms of a quantum computer of sophisticated scale and size could, in practice, break modern cryptography. And so that is a real threat that one has to think about. And we're doing things in the US, and I think internationally, we'll be working on things like post-quantum cryptography and working to ensure that as an international community, we can put in place the standards necessary to basically take away or mitigate that potential threat. But those are the two areas I see as threats.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. And those are two serious threats. And anyone would like to add some?
Maybe I add one, goes a little bit in this direction. This is also stimulated, let's say, by the promise. And one promise you mentioned, that's the ability of a perfect quantum computer to break today's cryptography. This immediately led to the fact that people, and you started this right in the beginning, talked about sovereignty in context with quantum technology. And this may lead to the fact that in the near future we will see, let's say, 3 clusters of activities ongoing, one North America, Western, one in Europe, and one in China. And I think at the end of the day, and also in the view of the status of technologies, this would be the wrong approach. We need more collaboration and open exchange of technologies in the beginning in order to reach the state of industrialization and go to market with this technology. So for me, this clustering, decoupling, or however you call it, is a big threat for quantum technologies overall.
Thank you.
I think I would echo some of these. The geopolitical directions causing this phase separation, I think, would have both the destabilizing effect and would slow down progress, leading to the sort of thing that Corey was saying. But I do think there are opportunities within there, just as every weakness is one, so is every threat, right? And one of those is that it is, picking up Michael's point, quantum really changes the way you think about engineering design. And I think that leads to things that broadly go under the idea of quantum inspired. I think it does have impact even beyond the pure quantum domain. And that's something where people going out from this skill base into other areas, I think, can provide real added value.
There is only one speaker left.
Yeah, perhaps to trying to summarize. So why thinking about breaking down walls? Why not preventing building new walls? I mean, that's all about, right? So preventing a new isolation. And as Chancellor Scholz recently mentioned in Berlin, technological sovereignty and quantum technology. So it's about sovereignty, but it's not about isolation. It's not about autarky. It's about joining forces. And I very much want to echo or like your idea that the technology should be available to everybody. And this is also, of course, commercially very interesting that you can sell all over the world. So I like very much this approach, but also from a society point of view, that when you have the technology, then everybody has the same abilities, and it's not about individual threats, and you have to defend again.
So we should champion open quantum then, is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Well, I have a question on that afterwards, but now, since I have been threatened with a big metal triangle by the organizers before, and now we are 20 minutes before the end, let us take some questions. I have been told that there is a fluffy red microphone which can be joyfully thrown around And I should insist until people throw it to each other. And here is the first one. You have to utter a question and identify one person who is going to answer your question.
Okay.
You can pick 1.5 if you wish.
Okay, fine. I'll take the two at the edges, just because so. So I would actually like to ask a very generic question, would be, what would your aspirations or your vision would be for what this second quantum revolution would actually encompass or bring about, or what kind of application do you think would take a quantum spin or a quantum dimension? Or has that not taken any shape yet?
Okay, since this was one of my reserved questions, you get a bonus, and you get to ask this to every one of them.
Great.
Please.
So I'll take the tack of focusing on quantum sensing, actually. And I think there is a real opportunity space within the medical community. We already saw the MRI is a result of quantum technologies. There are other quantum sensors that can be used in medical imaging in terms of measuring magnetic fields around the brain. So I think that's a real opportunity. Also in terms of the way we do imaging of in vivo behaviors in biological cells. So I think there's a really interesting opportunity space there to enhance. And I know places like Novo Nordisk in Finland are looking at this as an opportunity in the life sciences. So I'll leave some more space.
No, let's go. Yeah, okay.
So
go ahead.
From my perspective, if we look in, let's say, in the big field of quantum computer, and looking also into the current state of development, you see there quantum computers with a limited number of qubits, which are noisy itself, and they are far away from a universal quantum computer, or whatever you call the final state. But these devices are capable to solve some practical problems. So, for example, in molecule design, in drug design, in material science. And I think this is something which you could imagine in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years to show some breakthrough applications using quantum computers of this sign. And this would, for me, be a very important step in order to avoid any kind of quantum winter in the near future.
Now, since Sebastian was the last in many rounds, now you.
So I perhaps just to add one angle of view, I think all of these applications, I fully agree. So there has been the initial idea, right, for quantum computing, so to simulate the quantum world with something which itself is quantum. So there's definitely a high probability that this will take off. But then all of these thoughts, in my opinion, are coming from a classical point of view. And once you have a powerful quantum computer, I'm sure that there will be new fields of application which currently people don't even think about, just because then you have this toy at the table and you're just playing around with this, and suddenly you realize, hey, I could use this for that or for that I didn't even think about. So once you have this completely new way of computing, which offers you a completely new space of opportunities, I'm sure that there will be a lot of things which we can't even think of currently.
Thank you. Ian.
Well, there's already some benefits in some areas, such as quantum communications, which is around a form of point-to-point secure communications that is not subject to these cryptanalysis breaking that the quantum computers can provide. But I think the next stage is going to be what one might call a quantum network, which combines that communication with access to quantum machines of other kinds, whether that's distributed sensors or distributed computers of different scale. And I think that will lead to the sort of exciting thing that Sebastian was pointing to, which is new ways of using distributed quantum devices that really open up areas that we've not really yet tapped or explored.
So you can see that in this community we are very well coordinated across intercontinental scales, because we had 4 speakers and 4 answers, and one was on sensing, the other on communication, the other on computing, and the other on simulation, which are the 4 pillars of our activities. So thank you very much. Now, someone has to raise their hand to be thrown the fluffy mic, otherwise you will be thrown it without you asking for it. So here is someone, please.
Thank you.
Now you have to say who you want to ask the question to.
Oh, that's a difficult one.
I know.
That's a difficult one. Maybe to the very right. So my question is about, well, coming back to beforehand with collaboration, because I think it's a wonderful message that we should have kind of open quantum and all of this, exchange of talents and all of this. But actually, when we talk about quantum and we see it spoken about, it's spoken about as a weapon in the arms race against China. China is always brought up. So what I'm wondering about is, are you saying that we now should break down some of these barriers? So, for example, from my understanding, the US limits the access of certain Chinese and I think Russian researchers to labs. Should we break those down to have actual open quantum? And then, you're probably going to have a lot of problems with national security people and things like that. Or are you saying we should be having this open research within our sphere of people that we think are our allies in practice? Thank you. Anybody, it's just because that's,
So, I mean, look, I think that's a great question, and I think it comes in flavors depending on what part of the ecosystem you're looking at. When it looks at the basic fundamental science, I think we all still are encouraging to have interactions and engagements and the flow of talent from all over the world, and that has been encouraged and continues to be the case. I think you rightly pointed out, as you move up the chain, some of the technologies will have applications that need to have a little bit more thought given to them. And so one of the things that we work on hard is the thinking of how do we balance the promotion and engagement side with the real need to think about how do you protect the technology. And there are blunt instruments to do this, and there are more surgical, thoughtful instruments to do this. I like to think that we can be a little more surgical and thoughtful and think, how can we put in place mechanisms that allow these engagements to happen while safeguarding some of the things around, let's say, the IP you may be generating, or some of the more critical core components that you really think are the part that you don't want to give out. And so you're allowing the engagements while safeguarding. And this is something you would see at a company which is looking to have engagements. You would see already going on. This is already the case at most, federal research labs and stuff where they're doing some type of mixture of the two. And so I think that opportunity space is there, and it's one that we're looking at. The US relies heavily, again, on talent from all over the world. We draw that talent in from India, from China, from the EU. That talent flows in. Much of the talent oftentimes stays, especially from India and China, and sometimes the talent flows back out. So by creating good relationships, putting in place and safeguarding the things you really are concerned about, while letting the rest of it flourish, I think is probably the right balance. But it's a continued feedback of looking at what you're doing. Hopefully that's.
Thank you very much.
I entirely agree with that point of view. I think that I would add two points. One is, it is about, and at universities we have to do this all the time, how do you manage your relationships and build trusted partnerships that allow you to collaborate without tripping over yourselves in these areas. And second, just as the US does, the UK relies very heavily on international students and international researchers, just as we all do. I think that's an important element of soft power and influence as well. People coming to the UK or US, returning to their home countries, I think carry a set of values and a set of partnerships that can help influence the system in the long term. So it's about proper management of the relationships at each level that I think is crucial here.
Oh, I see that I cannot control my speakers. They all want to answer the questions, please.
So I think in order not to be, let's say, too overly optimistic on that, I think we should also look the perspective from a regional perspective, so say US or China or Europe. How close is quantum technology to real impact and to the possibility to be used as a strategic weapon? And at today's state of technologies, you can debate whether it is or not, because the maturity is not high. But if a certain threshold is reached, then I think the measures will be very clear, and the measures will go in, unfortunately for this conference here, building up some walls. We know that China very much is looking into achieving, let's say, world power in certain technologies, and quantum technology definitely is one of those. So I think we should not neglect this view. On the other side, I agree. If we look into the basic science, then definitely the evolvement of the overall field would benefit if cooperation between scientists can be maintained. But looking at what happens currently in Russia and with Russian scientists, it's clear also this will be threatened and jeopardized to a certain amount.
Thank you. Now, since I am close to Sebastian, I almost managed to negotiate a way that he also answers this question. So you can throw the fluffy thing to a person there in the back.
Hello, thank you very much. I had a question to all of you, by the way.
No.
Because you make it easy anyways to
No.
Well, whoever wants to answer, if you had today $100 million to distribute and wanted to give only to 2 companies working on application of quantum computing, what would you invest in, knowing that this could be a harbinger or a demonstration of tomorrow's applications of quantum, where the machines are ready, where there's no error issues or anything else? But what would you invest today that could be a determinant demonstration that quantum computing promise will happen in the next 10 or 15 years? Where would you invest money in?
That's easy. It's Zeiss and Infineon.
No, in which field? What would you throw your bucks in? I think
that's less easy. Yeah, that's right. Now you have to answer.
I see. Coming back to the previous question, no, no. Depends, I think, on the risk level which you want to take. I see much more potential on quantum computing, having really a huge potential to completely change certain areas. But of course, as said many times, the maturity level is still there. It has to be improved quite a lot, and it will take quite some years. So it depends on 100 millions. If you look at the current startups, they're valued above 100 millions, right? 300, 500, even €1 billion. So 100 millions might not be sufficient if you throw it to a single company to really bridge the gap until quantum computers are at the stage that they make economic impact. So therefore, if you're willing to give a bit more than after, then I would go for quantum computing.
Now you raised your hand again, so you want to throw it to yourself, or what?
No, I just wanted to clarify. It's not about investing in any hardware at all. It's about finding applications, quantum computing applications only. So what should be invested today that could be determined for tomorrow? Is it in material science? It is chemistry? It is quantum biology? Is it about solving Alzheimer's? Where do you feel that we need to put some effort today, incentivizing people to work on, that could get us to where we need to be in 10 years when everything is ready?
Sorry, then I got it wrong. So there, I definitely see or I think highly likely is the earliest uptake in quantum chemistry, which you can use for pharmaceutical as well, of course. So I would go into this direction. There is, of course, a discussion whether is it really possible to have a quantum advantage there, or is it really better than classical? But there, I have a broader definition of advantage. So if it's possible to have a faster calculation, a more accurate calculation, or even a calculation which is using less energy than in a classical high-performance computing, then for me as an industry guy, I'm already there having an economical advantage. So that's for me the current view, but there are a lot of other areas you would have to watch, like financial topics. You might have there much more leverage, perhaps, to have some improvement. But for me, material science or chemical reactions is the way to go.
Now, there is one last question before we get to the closing statements, please.
So I have one remark and one question. The remark is always nice in a panel discussion to talk about collaboration. But then if you think about Google versus IBM and this stuff, you see that it might be a war rather than a collaboration. So maybe if you want to trigger a collaboration, you need an arbiter. And so in Europe, it might be the European Commission that is launching an initiative to get together the forces and establish also the rules for the collaboration, because actually self-ruling is, let's say, at the industrial level may be a bit difficult. Okay, then the question comes in relation to electronics, because microelectronics is now hitting, or it's down the wall of 7 nanometers in the size feature, so it is really approaching the quantum domain. It's not usually considered a genuine and a pure quantum information, say quantum technology, but it's getting there. So I would like to hear your point of view as one of the applications in ultra-scale integration of the microelectronics.
Before someone decides to answer, I want to answer your comment. Well, 2 weeks ago I was at the White House because I just got green light from Vice President Vestager to put a quantum task force in the TTC, the Trade and Technology Council dialogue between the US Secretary of State and Secretary of Commerce and the 2 Vice Presidents of the European Commission, exactly to do what you said. So we are doing that. Now, anyone wants to take the question?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that one, because what you described also in the development of the semiconductor roadmap is some people describe it as end of Moore's law. So currently, if you look into the structures, you have 100 to 200 atoms which define the smallest structures which you handled on chip. And it is clear at a certain point in time, we can debate when it is, maybe the next decade or the decade after that, this will smooth down. And if you look into history, everybody knows that this law, which basically is an observation, has been the driver of an whole industry. So from an industry perspective, it's a very valid question to ask, what happens if this motor of the semiconductor industry is not pulling ahead with full steam? And in this respect, we have discussed also in previous years that we say this will lead to the fact that you need completely new architectures on the compute side. And then again, you are at the quantum computer. And why are people so hyped about this idea? Because it could be an answer to also to the end of Moore's law. And the second answer to this, also to a certain extent a hope, is to the extent that we understand the interaction between atoms on a countable level. So the interactions of 100 atoms on a silicon wafer, which is basically quantum mechanics, this could open up new possibilities in order to design those structures, which could provide us with improvements over time. So at least from my perspective, this would be my 2 hopes in this direction.
Thanks a lot. Now we have 2 minutes, which means every one of you has 30 seconds to have a final statement about what is your realistic hope for international cooperation in quantum.
Oh.
And we start with you.
I hand over to Ian. No. So for me, it's a great opportunity now to strengthen the ties to institutions, to areas, to regions where we have a very good relationship with, to strengthen here the collaboration, at the same time reach out again to others where we see increasing isolation in order to improve the collaboration here.
Thank you.
But of course, I think here very important is that we have a level playing field so that we play the game with the same set of rules. And whenever this is in danger, I think one has to think about protection of your own interests.
Thank you. Michael.
I think we need a much stronger coordination and orchestration of quantum technologies in Europe in order to get the progress which we all expect. I think this can be done has to be done on national level, but also on European level. So I really think in order to drive this thing forward to success, also from a European perspective, we need more orchestration and a clear technical roadmap how to come to quantum computers.
Thank you. Ian.
I think it is vital that at least at the scientific level, we continue with very broad international collaboration. I fear that national rhetoric and national action makes that more challenging. And I'm still hopeful that we will be able to associate to Horizon Europe.
Thank you. Cory.
So I think these three gentlemen really got it right, which is first, we have to get the basic science right. In the US, we try to fund the best science. We do that actually in many places around the world. The second is we need to make sure that we're supporting our industries. We have economic development consortiums. The EU has its own quantum consortium. There's one in the UK. In the US, finding a way for those to engage together on these kind of pre-competitive challenges. And the third, going back to, it's always about the people. We have to make sure we're enabling our people from young all the way up into, postdocs and beyond to make sure we can create these kind of collaborations that last.
Thank you. Apologies to the triangle that we are 20 seconds late, but thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.